Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move along. Push myself to be the best, die with no regrets. Live with every breath, see my message start to spread. And I had so many dreams, then you hit your teens. Life ain't really what it seems, try to find out what it means. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win. I don't want no fake love, I want the real stuff. Everybody listen up, cause I'll only say it once. I'm gonna show you all the path, if you want it bad. I'm gonna show you where it's at, yeah, how you can get it back. Yeah, cause I ain't never done, I'll be number one. Working hella hard until I get just what I want, yeah. Rises like the sun, yeah, fatal like a gun. Shooter's gonna shoot and I'm gonna shoot until I fall, yeah. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. Grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win, yeah.
Hey everybody, how are you on this Tuesday? We're supposed to get ice and snow overnight. I hope that the ice stays to a minimum because we do have state exams this week and I don't remember them ever being canceled because of weather. We've actually trudged in when it's been really snowy, but it's the ice that seems the most scary. So just as I was about to go live, I got a notification from a news station that the verdict is in for the driveway shooting trial. And the news coverage is supposed to start at 5 Eastern, which is seemingly perfect timing. So I have a short video that I'm going to play, and then I am going to read a part of a news article that was published today because the judge actually is allowing the jury to consider, allowed the jury to consider a lesser charge. Closing arguments, that was my plan. I was going to show the defense closing arguments today, prosecution tomorrow, and then the verdict Thursday. I honestly did not think the jury would have come to a verdict this quickly. They were given the case at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, and they have already reached a verdict. So I know what I'm thinking. I know what some of, the rest of you are thinking, but this is I'm wondering what's going to happen. So, we're going to get started. So hello everyone for being here. I'm just going to do a blanket hello because I don't want to miss the verdict. So this was a news story from yesterday because remember, closing arguments were supposed to start yesterday and they did not. They started today. And this is part of the reason why is because the defense asked for a lesser charge. So we're going to take a listen. It's just about 5 minutes and then we'll discuss.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sabrina Dhami with your 13 Now update on this Monday, January 22nd. We have some big developments in the driveway shooting trial just one day before closing arguments are set to begin. Mark Monahan is here in the 13 Now studio. Mark, you've been covering this trial every step of the way, and you have this breaking news first on 13.
Yes, Sabrina, good afternoon. There was a filing made by the defense just today. Again, the defense of Kevin Monahan, as they're hired to do, looking for the best possible outcome. And part of that is helping or trying to influence what the jury will get to consider once they begin deliberating. They're arguing that the jury is allowed to consider a lesser included charge, not just murder in the second degree, but
yes. So he was initially being charged with second degree murder. And so the defense is now had asked the judge yesterday to consider a lesser charge. Oh, thank you, AMAC. Okay.
but manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. This is the new filing today where the defense asks for criminally negligent homicide to be considered by the jury. Why is this important? Well, criminally negligent homicide carries a maximum sentence of 1 1/3 to 4 years in state prison. Murder.
So again, the defense is asked for Mr. Monahan to be charged with criminally negligent homicide, which would only give a sentence of between 1.5 to 4 years. Personally, I don't think that's enough time for taking someone's life. However, that is what the defense was asking.
Murder in the second degree carries a maximum sentence of 25 years to life in prison. So the defense today in their filing lays out their argument why criminally negligent homicide should be included. Primary to that is Kevin Monahan's testimony on Friday. He testified that this was an accident, that he tripped and fell. The filing says Mr. Monahan described stumbling on the deck, and in the process of trying to stop his fall, the shotgun struck either a vertical post or the horizontal railing which goes around his deck. His finger was not on the trigger. Again, that this was a purely an accidental firing.
And I do want to read that again. So the defense is stating Mr. Monahan described stumbling on the deck, and in the process of trying to stop his fall, the shotgun struck either a vertical post or the horizontal railing which goes around his deck. His finger was not on the trigger. And that detail is quite striking compared to what was stated during testimony. So I just find it very interesting because we hadn't heard of a vertical post or a horizontal railing before this.
His finger was not on the trigger. Again, that this was a purely an accidental firing. So they laid out all of this in a several-page document this morning describing that this was uncontroverted, that Kevin Monahan laid out exactly what happened that night. No one else, they say, saw what happened that night, and the prosecution didn't challenge any of this. So therefore, it's possible that this, in fact, was the case, that Monahan slipped and fell, or didn't fall, but jostled the gun a bit, causing it to go off. It continues. The people failed to present any testimony or other evidence which could have contradicted Mr. Monahan's description of how that second shot, which we now know was the fatal shot, was fired. So they go to great lengths here to try to show that this was more accidental, more negligent than depraved indifference.
And I have to disagree with the defense on that, because an accident that you bring a gun out of your house to allegedly fire a warning shot, yet then as you're after you shoot the warning shot, you trip and fall on where were you going? I mean, shouldn't you be stable when you shoot a gun off the first time? Like, why were you proceeding forward with your gun? That's my question. Right, Sinner, exactly. You can't accidentally shoot at a car in your driveway twice.
It will be up to the judge to decide whether that lesser included criminally negligent homicide will be considered by the jury. Judge Adam Michelini will likely rule on that he certainly will rule before the jury is charged after the closing arguments are completed. It also continues, the people failed to present a different version when they crossed Mr. Monahan. When they presented questions to him on cross-examination, they failed to present any rebuttal witnesses. So that's what's laid out in this filing. And I've just gotten my hands on the prosecution's reply to the defense's motion, and we'll have the latest on that coming up live at 4.
These major developments just coming in, Mark, at the very last minute. Is it surprising for this to happen at the time that it's happening?
The defense's job, as I mentioned at the outset here, is to get the best possible outcome for the defendant. So,
and Mickey, New York State does not have stand your ground law. It does not have that.
They have telegraphed this to some extent for several months now, that they were looking to get lesser included charges. But this is the first time since the trial started, certainly, where they've raised this, and they apparently feel strongly enough about it that they wanted to remind the judge how strongly they feel about it, asking him to rule on this before he charges the jury.
This breaking news just coming in, and Mark, as you said, you just got the response, so you're going to be going through that. So thank you very much, Mark, for filling us in here on 13 Now. And we'll, of course, get the latest from us starting live at 4.
We'll see you then.
Okay, so moving to this news article. So this was published today, and the headline was Monahan jury deliberating and can consider a lesser charge. Closing arguments ended Tuesday afternoon in the second-degree murder trial. So again, he's being charged with second-degree murder, but the judge did decide that a lesser charge can be considered. It is not criminally negligent homicide. So a Washington County jury began deliberations Tuesday afternoon in the driveway murder trial of Kevin Monahan and will have the option to convict the rural Hebron homeowner of the lesser charge of second-degree manslaughter in the shotgun killing of 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis. County Judge Adam Michelini allowed jurors to weigh the manslaughter charge against Monahan 66, but rejected a defense motion to have the jury consider an even lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide. If convicted of the original top charge of second-degree murder, Monahan faces 25 years to life in state prison. The manslaughter charge carries an indeterminate sentence of 5 to 15 years. The criminally negligent homicide charge, if it was allowed, would have carried 1 1/3 to 4 years. So I had misspoke earlier. I said 1.5 to 4 years. It is 1 1/3 to 4 years. Hey, Gina, glad that you're here because, yes, your impersonator was here earlier. Excuse me. The jury, now in its third week on the trial, began deliberations at about 2:30 p.m. following instructions from the judge Tuesday afternoon. On Tuesday, a packed first-floor courtroom listened to Monahan defense attorney Arthur Frost and First Assistant DA Christian P. Morris trade closing arguments before the jury of 8 men and 4 women. That's the first time I've actually heard that there's been 8 men and 4 women on the jury. And so again, to remind us, on April 15th, 2023, Gillis was one of 7 friends in their early 20s and late teens headed to a party at a friend's home in the Hebron area. The group, traveling in 2 SUVs and a motorcycle, accidentally turned up Monahan's long driveway on Patterson Hill Road at about 9:45 p.m. Prosecutors allege Monahan, in a display of depraved indifference to human life, fired 2 shots from a 20-gauge pump-action shotgun, the second of which struck Gillis as she sat in the passenger seat of a Ford Explorer. Gillis's boyfriend, Blake Walsh, who was driving the SUV, and 2 other friends, Jacob Haynes and Alexandra Whiting, who were in the back seat, tried to call 911 and left to find medical help for their wounded friend. They made it to Cemetery Road in Salem, where emergency workers worked on Gillis but could not save her. In Frost's roughly hour-long closing argument, the defense attorney repeatedly referred to his client's actions as negligent, as opposed to the wanton, inhumane, and evil state one would need to meet the criteria for murder. Frost contends the shooting was an accident. He said Monahan, a former professional motorcyclist, believed his home was under siege by bikers. Monahan testified that he fired a warning shot while standing backward to the group on his... Wait a minute, hold on. This is the first I'm hearing this. Monahan testified that he fired a warning shot while standing backward to the group on his wraparound deck to begin a dialogue with the group. I'm not sure, why would you stand backward? So that even makes me more secure in my thought, because if you're standing backwards, you fire a shot, why would you turn around to go toward the group again with your gun? Seems deliberate to me. Right, and that's, Remy, that's the other thing. Under siege by bikers, but then once you turn around and you see vehicles, clearly it's not a motorcycle gang or, a group of bikers. It's 2 cars and 1 motorcycle. Monahan said he then, while wearing flip-flops, okay, so, and that's one thing I forgot to look up, because I believe they had mentioned slippers at one point, and I totally forgot to look that up, but he says he was in flip-flops. He stumbled on nails. He said his shotgun banged the porch and accidentally went off without the trigger being pulled. Okay, so that's what I had thought. He said the shotgun banged the porch. Never hit a vertical post, the horizontal rail. It wasn't that specific in his testimony. He didn't do this on purpose, Frost told the jury on Tuesday. Frost seized on the testimony of the prosecution's firearm expert, state police forensic scientist Victoria O'Connor, reminding jurors that the shotgun fired when O'Connor dropped it on the ground during one of the 8 tests O'Connor performed on the weapon. Frost downplayed the expert's additional finding that the shotgun was not defective. Monahan didn't want to shoot anyone. This gun will fire when no one pulls the trigger. So the defense is holding on that the gun fired by itself. In a closing approaching 2 hours, Morris, who is again the DA, outlined the prosecution's case, focusing on the time frame of a crime he said took place within 90 seconds. He noted that every other witness testified that both shotgun blasts were fired within 5 seconds of one another. He played portions of Monahan's call to 911, where the defendant suggested to the operator that hunters were possibly at his property, as well as body camera footage from police. And that is something that I do still intend to show, because I'm interested to see what the jury saw in closing arguments. Kevin, what happened here tonight? A police officer asked Monahan when police went to his home to investigate the shooting. Nothing, Monahan replied, adding that he was, quote, sound asleep. So he told police he was sound asleep. He told the 911 operator that he believed hunters were around. Then, in his testimony, he said he thought it was a group of bikers that were going to seize him and his wife or his property. So, lots of different stories. Morris showed photos of the defendant's porch, noting no sign of any nails. He showed Monahan's flip-flops, adding, "Where's the mark?" There's none. The prosecutor told jurors that while Monahan claimed he cannot fire a trigger without using all his fingers, photos in Monahan's home showed a shooting range target. Morris reminded jurors that Monahan works in construction, which involves hammers and other tools, and as recently as 2018 was competing in motocross. Morris detailed multiple inconsistencies between Monahan's account on the witness stand and those of his wife, Jinx. Whereas Monahan testified he told his wife to go into the closet when the would-be intruders were outside, his wife testified that he did not ask her to go into the closet. Monahan additionally faces charges of first-degree reckless endangerment and tampering with evidence. So that is an update on what's happened today. And so the jury, or the verdict, is in, and it's about 4 minutes until the local news coverage goes live. So we will be waiting for that, and I will share that with you once they do go live. Hey, Sunnyside, good to see you. Yeah, K-Braze, the real question is, why would you need to even fire a warning shot if there was no actual threat? Right. And in the article, it also says, he also said, where is it? Right. So when he said he, like, when you fire a warning, and I don't know, about, I know of guns, but like, when you're firing a warning shot, why would you stand backward? That, I don't understand that. That's still kind of bugging me, because if you walk out of your home and you intend to shoot off a warning shot, why would you stand backward? Why wouldn't you want to face your threat? Why would you want your back to the threat? And again, he did say he wanted to begin a dialogue with the group, which we did hear the last time I was live. He then, while wearing flip-flops, stumbled on nails. And then he said the shotgun banged the porch and accidentally went off without the trigger being pulled. And so with the defense saying, he didn't do this on purpose, he deliberately got his gun and went outside. So do I think he intended to kill anyone? No, I do not. But that is why it's second-degree murder with a depraved indifference to human life. Because he didn't intend to kill anyone, but by shooting his gun at the car, there was a possibility that he could injure or kill someone. And unfortunately, Kaylin lost her life. So I'm really interested to see what the jury finds. And that's the other thing. So the other thing that the prosecution had said was that every witness every other witness besides, I guess, Mr. Monahan, testified that both shotgun blasts were fired within 5 seconds of one another. So if you fire a warning shot, you turn around, and within 5 seconds you trip in the gunshot itself. I just don't I don't believe him. And it looks like it's going. I just got a notification on my phone that it is set to start, but they're still not live. But what I can do, just so that I can still look at chat, I'm going to just put this on the screen. And then once it goes... All right, what is happening here? Why can't I make it? Oh, because it's not live yet. I guess I can't make it full screen. That doesn't make any sense. I guess I can't. Okay, so we'll just kind of keep it in the corner until it goes live. So we'll just wait for that. Ashtastic, that's a good question. So the neighbors, I don't know if the neighbors testified. The article, I had read the article last time about the neighbors. Let me see. I'm going to look up if I can find that again while we're waiting. All right, let's see. So I do have an article here. And also, we want to remember that Monahan was initially uncooperative, refusing to speak to police. He refused for hours before surrendering to police. So my question to Mr. Monahan would be, if it was an accident, why weren't you forthcoming with police? I feel like if it was an accident and I didn't want it to happen, or I wasn't intending it to happen, that I would personally, I would be completely distraught, inconsolable. I would want to tell police, it's an accident. Oh, and this is something I didn't remember. So the lawyer said, so when police were so Monahan had called his lawyer in those hours, and so the lawyer had said his client was exercising his right to remain silent when he declined to talk to police about what happened. However, when police officials told the lawyer over the phone that someone had died, the lawyer helped arrange the peaceful surrender. So Monahan was not going to talk to police, in my opinion, at all. All right, so that one didn't have the neighbors. I think it was the Daily Mail. Let's see, let me look up. Hey, Scorpio. Oops, it looks like Scorpio left. I missed Scorpio when they first came in. And thank you, Sinner. I thought you were already a member, but thank you for becoming a member again. Let's see. Oh, yes. So this is the one that has, this article has about the neighbor. So let me, this article was just saying that the neighbor, when he heard what happened, the first person he thought of was Mr. Monahan, because he had a short fuse. He could do no wrong. He thought nobody else, no one else knew much of anything. Okay, so we're still waiting. So what I'm going to do is actually look and see if any other local news are live. Let me think. I'm trying to think of what the other... Oh, are you kidding? So this other news station clearly is okay. Well, here's the verdict. Let me share my screen. Maybe they didn't let cameras in, but here is another news station. All right, so this is the verdict. I should have picked this station instead of the one I was waiting on. All right, so here we go.
That is some breaking news that we are just getting into our newsroom. The jury has come to a verdict in the trial against Kevin Monahan, the man accused of fatally shooting Kaylin Gillis, a young woman who drove up his driveway in Washington County.
Kevin Monahan has been found guilty of all charges.
Now, the jury reaching that verdict just moments ago after deliberating for about an hour. We will have much more from the courtroom coming up at 5 o'clock.
Okay, so they are going to have more. So that was very quick, but we'll listen to that again. So he was found guilty on all charges, including
the jury has
second-degree murder. They deliberated for about an hour. So he was convicted. Good question, Mickey. So let me go back to... It was second-degree murder. And I want to get these right. So, tampering with evidence. And I believe there was one more charge. Reckless endangerment. That's what it was. Okay, so actually I'm going to share this tab instead while we're waiting to see. So this is from Daily Gazette. Oh, these ads. So a Washington County jury convicted Kevin Monahan Tuesday of second-degree murder in the fatal shooting of 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis last April. The jury returned its verdict after less than an hour of deliberations. The 66-year-old Hebron man, also convicted of first-degree reckless endangerment and tampering with physical evidence, will return for sentencing at 9 a.m. on March 1st. The verdict came after jurors heard closing arguments from attorneys Tuesday morning and into the afternoon. In the prosecution's closing arguments, Washington County Assistant DA Christopher Morris focused the jury on the results of Monahan's alleged conduct rather than defense arguments about what he knew. The question isn't whether Kevin Monahan knew he killed Kaylin Gillis, Morris told the jury. It's if he cared, and he didn't. Monahan stood accused of fatally shooting Gillis with his shotgun when she and a group of friends accidentally turned down his driveway last spring while looking for a friend's nearby house. And again, it was less than a mile from where their destination was. Monahan defense attorney Arthur Frost, in his closing, focused on the long gun, arguments the jury appeared to swiftly reject. Frost recounted testimony given about so-called drop testing done on the gun by investigators. During opening statements, he said, once the gun was tested, it went off without anything touching the trigger. He said Tuesday that the gun was dropped on a rubber mat, then, not on a hard surface like it would have hit on the night of April 15th, 2023. This gun will fire even when no one pulls the trigger, Frost repeatedly told the jury as a courtroom officer held up the defendant's gun. The defense attorney asked jurors Tuesday how confident they were, if the shotgun was loaded, that it would not go off in the courtroom if the court officer dropped it. Okay, that to me is a little ballsy. So again, he asked jurors Tuesday how confident they were, if the shotgun was loaded, that it would not go off in the courtroom if the court officer dropped it. I mean, I don't know if I would have said that, but Frost told the jury that when the gun discharged a second time on the night of the shooting, Monahan had stumbled on a nail sticking out of his deck. He showed the jury a photo of the deck, pointing out darker spots he said were nails popping up. While Monahan faced a top charge of second-degree murder, jurors were also instructed by Judge Adam Michelini that they could find Monahan guilty of the lesser charge of second-degree manslaughter, and instead of second-degree reckless endangerment, they could convict him of the lesser charge of first-degree reckless endangerment. The defense also recounted what Monahan was doing the night of the incident and how scared he and his wife were when they saw two SUVs coming up their driveway and blocking their only exit. Okay, does the defense remember what was said during testimony? Because I just read that other article that reminded us that Mr. Monahan believed that it was a group of bikers who were there to seize his property or his possessions. So now the defense said, okay, he knew that it was two SUVs. I mean, I'm going to do a series where we start from the beginning and go forward, because there are so many discrepancies and it's just bizarre. Frost called into question a number of the prosecution's witnesses. He referred to their testimony as, quote, fake or changed because some of the testimony given in court differed from statements to police last year. Well, remember, his client and his client's wife also changed their testimony from grand jury to the trial. So I don't think that's a very good argument, sir. The prosecutor, Morris, chalked the differences up to witnesses in the car with Gillis speaking to law enforcement right after being shot at and trying to save their friend's life. I agree with that statement. If your friend is dying, you're going to be concerned with your friend and not necessarily details of what occurred. Like, you just know that you were being shot at and now your friend is shot. Morris went over a timeline of the night. He compared the timestamps given on footage showing the vehicles go up to the Monahan residence with witness testimony from people in the vehicle and the Monahan's neighbors who recounted what and when they saw things occur the night of the incident. He also showed video detailing the drive the vehicles would have taken and how long it would have taken them to go up and down the Monahan's driveway. The prosecutor told the jury that using all of the information from this trial, it would mean that the 3 vehicles would have only been up Monahan's driveway for about 90 seconds in total. Morris replayed clips of the 911 calls the group of friends made as they attempted to save Gillis and administer CPR to the best of their ability. And remember, we did learn from the medical examiner that, or the doctor that was, what I guess medical examiner, their efforts were futile because it hit her spinal column, which would have caused instant death. Where did I leave off? He also played parts of the 911 call when police officers arrived at the residence, and Monahan called 911 and spoke with a dispatcher who told him officers were there responding to a noise complaint. If you can find the truth in the details, you will find the greater truth of what happened April 15th, 2023, Morris said. Monahan's defense team called for a mistrial ahead of closing statements Tuesday morning, citing prejudice against the defendant and pattern of court errors. I did not know that they also called for a mistrial ahead of the arguments, so that was something I didn't know. Attorney Kurt Mazur accused Michelini of previously calling this case a simple case. Wow, he accused the judge? So the defense attorney accused the judge of previously calling this case a, quote, a simple case. Mossert told the judge that this case is anything but simple, and that by saying it, Michelini was telling the nature of the case before there had been any testimony. The judge said Mossert was putting words in his mouth. He said when he called the case simple previously, he was calling it that because of its smaller amount of charges than other cases. Michelini asked that because Mossert's motion was so lengthy that he instead submitted it in writing. The judge also denied a motion from the defense to have the jury consider the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide in this case. For the second time during the trial, a juror was dismissed Tuesday morning due to an illness. Okay, so they actually lost 2 initial jurors for illness, so 2 of the alternates ended up taking spots on the jury. So that was pretty interesting. So let me go back to comments just to see. Excuse me. Yeah, and I don't see, I think when they said they'd have more at 5, I think they meant like the 5 o'clock newscast, which I'm going to see if there's anything new. But the one station didn't have anything like they were supposed to. All right, let's see. So that's the last there. Let me check this other station. So here, all of the people that were waiting with me didn't get any update from the one news station. Okay, so this is... Okay, so here we have a jury, the verdict reaction I just found. So this is live. We're a little behind, but this will be interesting to hear as well. And I apologize, there is no closed captioning for this, but if you're on the replay, you will have closed captioning. Southern Girl, so they were going to a friend's home for a party, and they turned up the wrong driveway. So just to give an idea, let me go to Google Maps just before we get to that. Patterson Hill Road. Okay, so here, and just to, this is actually a good reminder for all of us. So this is Mr. Monahan's home where the red mark is. And so you can see his driveway is very long. It's a huge wraparound driveway. And it could be mistaken for a road. Where they were going is here, and I don't know why my cat isn't showing. But oh, there we go. I just put a little mark there. Oh, there's my cat. So where my cat is, that is where they were going. So you can see that they turned up this driveway thinking it was a road, where they should have turned up this road and then went up this driveway to their friend's home. So, and that was 9/10 of a mile. 9/10 of a mile. And as soon as they went up the driveway, they realized they were at the wrong house because there were no lights on. So they turned around, and they were in the second point of their the 3-point turn when the shot was fired. So they were actually leaving or attempting to leave when the second shot was fired. Yes. And I'm guessing people may have answered those questions, but if there are other questions, please let me know. Hey, Cocoa Puff. All right, so this again is driveway shooting trial verdict reaction.
So I do have some things I'd like to say just before. You guys have all been very patient with me over the last 9 months. So if you just indulge me for another couple of minutes. Now I want to start with the jury. They were here, I think, on January 5th, I think was that Friday. And they dedicated their time. One of the nice things that you all have had the opportunity is to watch how attentive.
And I'm wondering, give me 1 second. I'm wondering who this man is. So let me see. They don't say who this man is. So I believe he is part of the prosecution team. I don't know for sure, but just based on pictures I've seen of inside the courtroom, I believe he is part of the prosecution, but I could be wrong.
Attentive the jury is and how seriously they take their jobs. I'd like to thank them first and foremost. They put their lives on hold as well for the past 2.5+ weeks, and they had to listen to things that no one wants to hear, right? And yet they did it. They were attentive and what we believe returned a just verdict. Court personnel, you all got to watch just how smoothly the operations ran. And that's not easy with as many people and as emotional a trial that this was. And they really kept things moving in a direction that was very helpful. But really turning to why we're here, the actions of Kevin and Jinx Monahan on the night of April 15th really wreaked an unimaginable tragedy on not only Kaylin's family, but also all of the kids that were in those vehicles. And today's verdict, I hope, is a small step forward for each of them to really begin to move on to the next chapter in their healing. Christian and I have talked a lot in preparation for this case, and a big part of our approach was we wanted them to know that.
So Kevin and his wife's name is Jinx. So yes, so when they said Kevin and Jinx Monahan, Jinx is his wife.
We believed in what they were saying, that there's a purpose and that there will be justice. And our hope is today that they can begin to find that little bit of faith and justice, that they can begin to move forward to heal, because this is not the end for them. And they have a long road ahead of them, and we're hopeful that this is part of it. Having the opportunity to hold Kevin Monahan accountable. I stood here and I think Mr. Monahan asked the question, What do you hope? What's your promise? And our promise that day is the same as it is today, is to seek justice for Kaylin.
And no, his wife is not getting charged as well. However, during the trial, she was deemed a hostile witness because when the prosecution was asking questions of her, she was very vague. She was soft-spoken. She didn't remember details. But when the defense questioned her, she remembered everything. Yes, so the judge did deem her a hostile witness during the trial. And it was also shown by the prosecution that her grand jury testimony differed significantly from the testimony that she was giving during the trial.
And, we couldn't have done that without the kids. And for those of you that were in the courtroom on that Thursday, to listen to them tell their stories and endure cross-examination, it's an amazingly difficult task. But in the midst of everything that had happened to them, they had the wherewithal to share what had happened. The neighbors, these kids, you all know, they feel responsible. And because our neighbors in Washington County were willing to get involved, those kids know or they'll have a basis to know that there's nothing that they did that was wrong. Because, adults tend not to believe kids. And so it was really nice for them to have people that could say to them, you were right, you did nothing wrong, you were just lost.
Yeah, and that's the sad part about all of this is they were just lost. They took one wrong turn and immediately turned around when they realized they were in the wrong place. And they lost their friend because of it.
Kelsey Carpenter, the story's not complete without our 911 call center. She helped diffuse a situation that could have been very dangerous. And yet her ability to respond to off the cuff, really, and go with a story that the defendant was giving her helped keep the situation calm and end the way it did. For those of you who cover Washington County, we've had too many of these tragedies, too many of these big cases. So I am becoming a bit of a broken record here, but an inevitable question will be, who do we thank? Whenever Senior Investigator Spezio shows up at a significant crime scene and needs help, he calls the state police. And the state police, no matter the time, day or night, they don't ask why or how come. They say how much, how many. And this is a perfect example. When we were compiling our discovery requirements, there were over 40 members of law enforcement that showed up. The state police sent the FIC kicked in, the crash reconstruction unit, major crimes, computer crimes. They all just show up, and that was 1 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. You heard the ones that testified; none of them were working, but the call goes out, and they all show up.
So that kind of gives an idea of, so again, around 9:45 p.m. on Saturday is when Kaylin and her friends were driving up Mr. Monahan's driveway, and the law enforcement, the crime bureau investigative team arrived at 1 a.m. on Sunday. So that's about 3 hours. So I don't know exactly how long Mr. Monahan was refusing to talk to police, but we can assume that it was at least 2 to 3 hours.
And then lastly, certainly, then I'll take whatever questions you have. None of this is possible without really an incredible prosecution team. Y'all got to watch Christian in the courtroom. His calm presence, his demeanor, his grasp of the facts and the law, and just the way in which he conducts himself. And so I know Christian's here. I made him come because I wanted to thank him publicly because it just doesn't happen. I mean, you just saw how amazing he is. But there's a huge team behind that as well. We're a small office. Stuff continues to run.
Okay, so that is part of the prosecution, which I assumed just based on the way he was speaking. So, and again, the blurriness is not on me. It's on on the news.
But, we had
people.
the kids that were in the vehicles. We had Kaylin's family. Robin runs our crime victim office with Laura and Emily. They've been available for them day and night. They have their personal cell phone numbers, and, none of this matters if we're not able to help the victims begin to understand the system and what the next weeks and months are going to be like. And they've been there every step of the way. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank them. And then lastly, there's a whole lot of people that contributed to managing the discovery, but Kim Little and Vern Bosley, they marshaled over 3,500 pages of discovery. And that's an awful lot of information to get into a usable form that we can turn over. So really, I just want to thank them. I appreciate the indulgence, and I'll answer any questions you have.
Tony, much of the nation was watching what was happening in this courtroom here in Port Edward. What message does this send to this community and to the world, this verdict?
Well, I hope it sends them a message of hope, right? That there's people that are willing to be involved and step up, whether it was the neighbors who called 911, who are bearing the tragedy for the kids, right? That they did nothing wrong. And I hope it gives them hope that the system works. We have to be patient. We have to realize that, bad people do bad things, but when they're held accountable, the system works.
Tony, I don't think I've ever seen a closing summation that took more time than the jury took to deliberate. Have you seen a murder case where a verdict came so quickly? And what do you think that says about the way your office and Kristen presented the case?
Our responsibility, at its core, is to take the facts, present them to the jury in an understandable fashion, and then be able to wrap a bow around it, right? And so what you saw was the efficient action and the hard work. I mean, it's hours and hours and hours of work to do that. I think.
Thank you, Ashtastic. I just saw the New York Times had reported on it, but unfortunately, I am not subscribed, so it said I couldn't read it. But I will check the one you sent. Maybe that one will allow me to read it. But yes, because I was looking to see, it's actually hit the AP News. The New York Times has it. So I mean, it's the word traveled quickly. Absolutely. So thank you.
I think this is a case, though, where the facts really spoke for themselves. And in his opening, Christian talked to the jury about it's going to be bit by bit, right? Maybe if you're married to a quilter, you would say it's making a quilt, right? You get all the squares together. Those are your facts. But it's how you put the squares together as to whether or not you get the result that you've identified in this particular case. And because Christian was able to take all of those facts, work with all of our witnesses, and have them be able to tell their story of what happened to them. But then turn around and take 2 weeks of that information and knit it together, stitch it together for the jury. There really wasn't another verdict that I think would have been appropriate given all of that. But they did their job.
And I agree with the prosecution. It let you read it from Google. Yeah, I just tried your link and it pops up and says subscribe for $1 or something like that. So thank you though. Christian is the assistant district attorney. Yes. Christian P. Morris.
They were a couple of hours of, but they'd had it for 2.5 weeks. So, I think they spent that time.
Did you have an opportunity to share a moment with the Gillis family post-verdict?
We did. And, today is certainly a difficult day. There's relief that the system works, that there's justice for Kaylin. So that's a good part of the day for them. And the bad part of the day for them is they're going to walk out the door and they're still not going to have Kaylin. And so, those emotions will pull on them. But I really think today for them, they've known that Christian and Laura and Robin and Emily and I and everyone in the office have believed in them, have believed in the kids and believe in justice. Today, they have the realization that 12 strangers did as well. So I think will be a good part of the day for them.
It seemed that the verdict came back right after that note, and the jury asked about Mr. Monahan use of his gun to shoot small animals and hunting. What do you think that note told the jury? And it just seemed like once they had the answer to that, as well as the difference between the two charges, they came right back.
I think more importantly was the question on the law. I do think back to something you asked as far as the effort at wrapping all of the evidence together. One thing, there was no elaboration, no exaggeration, no manipulation of the facts. It was just a sharing of what the facts are, comparing and contrasting the two stories. And the jury had that. I think the jury wanted to hear what is the core difference between murder, which is really acting with depraved indifference to human life. At the end of the day, I think that's what they wanted to hear. Is that the difference, the core difference between manslaughter and murder? And there was no question in our mind. And I think hearing that was the key for them, is, okay, it is the depraved indifference. I think the other portion of the factual readback, I wouldn't want to speculate what a juror or jurors were thinking and asking for that. It wasn't something we had highlighted in our closing. So obviously it was something they heard. Maybe a couple people heard it and a few didn't, and they just wanted to confirm that that was what they'd actually heard.
You mentioned James Monahan. Talk a little bit more. When you first opened just now, you said you wanted to hold Kevin and James.
K-Breeze, I can't say whether or not sympathy played a part, but I do believe that the jury, and this is where he just said they had asked again what the definition of depraved indifference meant. So they definitely took their job seriously and wanted to know exactly what that meant, because again, the second-degree murder charge had to do with a depraved indifference to human life. So I think knowing what that definition was led them to find Mr. Monahan guilty. And in New York State, again, that sentence is anywhere from 25 years to life in prison without parole. So he's going to have a very lengthy time in prison, I should say.
James Monahan. Talk about that.
Well, I think if I said that one, what I meant to say, what I meant to say is what they did that night was wreaking immeasurable horrors on these families. The accountability, criminal liability. We spent a lot of time on this case long before charging, going to the grand jury rather, and there was no evidence to support criminality. But as you heard summarized today, some of the kids testified. She was there, she was present. And the only inference that we could draw from that fact was they didn't talk about what had happened on the porch because she stood there and watched what happened on the porch. That doesn't make you criminally liable. But I also have a strong moral sense, and I think she had a moral responsibility that she chose not to exercise when that opportunity was present. She could have told Kelsey. I mean, you guys saw Kelsey, right? That talk about an unassuming, soft-spoken person, unless she's trying to help save a life. And then she's very powerful and driven. So there certainly there was plenty of opportunities that she could have shared what she saw, and she chose not
to. And speaking of the gun, I see, Mickey, your comment, if you own a gun, better be ready to take responsibility. Thank you, Ashtastic, for sending this photo. So I hadn't seen the shotgun. This is a photo. Again, this is from the New York Times, so thank you for sharing this. This is the rifle or the shotgun that was used in this crime. Yes, March 1st. And there was also, so we did see in the one video, there were pictures of, or a video of the car. There is, let me just show this photo. So this was shown during closing arguments, I would assume, if not opening arguments. And then this is another view of the SUV. So again, the bullet went here, again, whizzed past the one boy who was in the back seat, and then it went diagonally to the passenger side where Kaylin was sitting. And I'm going to find that video that has the other photos, the other images of the car. So let me go back here.
Certainly could not change his actions on April 15th. Do you think there would be a different outcome today if he had been more truthful when he was first encountered by authorities and on the witness stand?
He chose not to, so I wouldn't speculate whether or not he even had that in him to do that. I think we saw who he is.
What sort of sentence are you seeking?
So the maximum on the murder is 25 to life. We will be asking for the judge to impose the maximum sentence. The reckless endangerment for the kids, because it's the same act, that is a concurrent sentence. So that won't add to his length of time. The tampering is a separate transaction and occurrence, meaning he took those steps after he had shot and killed Kaylin. So we will be asking for the maximum there. It's an e-felony, so it's 1/3 to 4, but we will ask for that to run consecutive as well. Ultimately, the Judge Michelini will be the one that has to make those decisions. But I am certain you guys all saw how Christian does with his cross-examinations and his closing. His arguments for sentencing will be powerful. I imagine, the victims, it gives them an opportunity to share who Kaylin was. We didn't get to hear that, and that's an important part. And we shouldn't, but they'll get to share that on March 1st. So I think that'll be a strong day, and then the judge will have to make his decision. And I trust the juries. I trust the judge. I don't get to control them, so that's stressful. But we trust that they'll do what they think is right and impose a just sentence.
I'm sure you're expecting the defense counsel people who are going to raise much different points during the motions for this trial and what become. Ready? Expecting that?
Oh, sure. I would have told you that at 7:30 a.m. on April 16th, when I was talking to law enforcement at state police about what charges we were going to be filing. I would have said no matter what, they'll be appealing. So, but yeah, I would expect them to. I think.
Oh, Mickey, it's okay. Question away. Yeah, and concurrent, he'll most likely die in prison. Yes.
The judge, though, did an outstanding job of protecting the record, kept a clean record.
Because he is 66 years old, and the minimum is 25 years. So he'll be 81. 91. Just from the 25 years.
And really, Attorney Frost, he shows that you can be a zealous advocate without being a clanging cymbal or banging drum. He worked hard for his client, but he also contributed to a smooth and efficient trial, even though it took 2.5 weeks. So,
do you think you mentioned it during his closing, it almost seemed like he felt he needed to sort of address his own path of defending his client. He sort of, you could say, muddied up the kids a little bit when he asked them questions about substances in the car. What do you think about that? You can ask that question. Do you think that maybe that didn't resonate with the jury?
I'll answer that two ways. As an attorney, he has a job to do. He's got to represent his client. As part of that is making sure that the police didn't overstep their boundaries and make sure that we're held to the very high standard that we're held to. So he had an obligation there. As a parent, I take a different view, and that the presence or not of that had nothing to do with what those kids observed. And so I would imagine that also had an effect on people in the jury. But he had a job to do, and he did it in a way that I think maintained the integrity of the profession, but at the same time ensured zealous representation of his client.
All the kids were there when the verdict came down. Right?
Yes, that was their friend. I mean, remember, this is someone that was their friend, that they watched an unimaginable action occur, and they were a part of it, and then they had to be part of telling that story. And so it was an important part for them today too, as much as it was for Andy and his family, but for the kids and their family to be able to be there to watch the this part of the conclusion, and then there's another chapter on March 1st, but I think it was important for them to be there. And they also showed great self-control, because there was a lot of things that they would like to have been doing today in that courtroom when the verdict was read. And for a group of young kids, I think you kind of saw who they are, right? They're respectful. They're all unique, but they were also respectful of the setting they were in. I would imagine the reaction right now is a little different. But, all right. Well, I thank you and
Can we
appreciate it.
Christian too? Christian, do you mind?
That's his call.
All right, so the assistant district attorney is going to come up now. I heard somebody in the media was like, is Christian going to come up? And so we'll see what the ADA has to say.
Christian, what was your reaction? What was your reaction when that verdict came in under 2 hours?
Thankfulness, straight thankfulness. We're talking about trying to ask 12 people to determine what the truth is. And I believe they nailed it, that was the truth, and I was thankful for that.
Did you have an opportunity to speak to Gillis family?
I did.
What did you share? If you don't mind, Christian.
To try to give them the direction for how to work towards hope. You go through something like this and there's despair. And you're searching for something to give you direction. So in whatever ways that I can try to help them see that there is a path to hope, that there is a greater hope than what we can see here. If this wasn't an outcome like this in this case, that would just increase 100-fold. So my hope is that they see a path to reach hope, a hope that is given to us from above.
Do you suppose, and I know it's difficult to get into the minds of a jury or a juror, do you suppose that they couldn't reconcile the lies he admitted to with then saying, I'm telling the truth now on the witness stand?
Oh, sure. I imagine that has to be a very obvious thing. Again, not getting into their minds, but that was something that you couldn't reconcile, how he could lie in one instance and give a completely different version of events on the stand and then ask them to believe him now.
Were you at all surprised by what their defense became?
No.
That the gun was dropped, and once you got the test back from the New York State Police lab, did you think, okay, this is going to be their defense?
No, I knew that was going to be their defense on April 16th. And I knew that no matter what the results of that drop test were, that this trial was going to be exactly what it was.
Really?
Yes.
Had they intimated, had they implied that there were nails on the deck at that point?
I've been a defense attorney for many years, and if I had to take a look at the facts and try to find out what might be argued, that was the only argument.
Christian, in the courtroom, you wear the hat of a prosecutor, but I know that you were also a parent. And I can't help but think that in the back of your mind, you have kids in the community, and perhaps you think that any one of your kids might have turned up the wrong driveway. Is that in your mind when you're prosecuting this case?
That's a hard thing to do. As a prosecutor, you got to balance a couple things. You have to balance sympathy, which you need in order to be zealous, and guard against empathy, which is what you're starting to talk about, not to split a fine hair on it. Getting into that circumstance is very difficult as a prosecutor. I think it gets you emotionally twisted up and you can't see clearly. So if you can stay grounded in sympathy, you can stay grounded in zealousness. And so that's something I have to put out of my mind while I focus on advocating for what the truth is.
Do you think you're trying this case for all of the parents in Washington County?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think anywhere, really. Again, as Mr. Jordan had said, the case like this nationally has got to be something that the people know, that there are prosecutors that want the truth and hold people accountable, that their desire is to make sure we have safe communities, and that those that do wrong won't get away with it.
Christian, I want to ask you about comments you made mention of it in your summation that he was trying to start a quote unquote dialogue, like firing a shotgun. What could you say about that? What do you think that, how far that went with the jury?
Well, my hope with that, and if you were there for cross-examination, is that the absurdity of something like that was just patently clear in the room that you could hear
I agree. I agree with him very much so.
a pin drop. If anybody had any thought of actually considering that to be true.
The DA said you're seeking a maximum sentence for the murder conviction. Can you just go over how many years is that? 25 to life?
25 to life would be the high end, 15 to life is the low end. When you add in the tampering, it's possible he can get 1 1/3 to 4 consecutive to the 25.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right. So I did get the New York Times article. So I'm just going to read this and then I'll give some last thoughts and wrap this up. So again, this is New York Times. Man found guilty of murder in wrong driveway shooting in upstate New York. Kevin Monahan, 66, fatally shot a 20-year-old woman when the car she was riding in came up his driveway at night. And there is a photo of Mr. Monahan. And he has been in prison, in jail since his arrest. A man from upstate New York was found guilty on Tuesday of second-degree murder for fatally shooting a young woman who was riding in a car that had mistakenly driven up his driveway. He had argued that he fired the fatal shot by accident. Although his defense argued that the fatal shot was shot by the gun itself. On the night of April 15th, the defendant, Kevin Monahan, fired 2 shots with a 20-gauge shotgun, one of which struck a car carrying Kaylin Gillis, 20, who was hit in the neck and died soon after. And speaking of the car, I did find the video that had a photo of the car. Why did it just do that? So this was another view of the car where you can see when they did their reenactment. The word is escaping my mind. You can see where the bullet went in from here, and then I'm just going to play this for a second.
Explorer, one hit Gillis in the neck.
And then here you can see this laser. You can see where the bullet came through. Kaylin was sitting here, and then it hit the passenger side door and then fell on the floor. Trajectory. Thank you, K-Braze. It completely escaped my brain. Thank you. Miss Gillis and a group of 6 friends had been trying to find a friend's house for a Saturday night party when they drove up Mr. Monahan's half-mile-long driveway in the rural town of Hebron, New York, about 55 miles north of Albany. During the 2-week trial, Mr. Monahan, 66, had argued that he had not meant to shoot at the car carrying Miss Gillis, but had tripped on his porch. He said he had initially fired a warning shot after seeing a caravan of 2 cars and a motorcycle arrive at his house at night. He was described by his lawyers as an old man who had been awakened in bed and had been terrified that a group of marauders had come to attack him and his wife, Jinx, who was hiding inside the house, also armed with a gun. So she also was armed with a gun. I did not know that. I knew of what she had said. She was hiding in the closet. I didn't realize that she was also armed with a weapon. But the authorities had expressed doubts about the level of danger Mr. Monahan might have felt that night, noting that the vehicles were turning around to leave. And prosecutors had expressed deep skepticism about his defense argument, saying in a closing statement on Tuesday that Mr. Monahan had acted with animus and callous disregard for the people who had stumbled onto his property. Kevin Monahan did not act out of fear, said Christian Morris, the first assistant DA for Washington County, speaking to the jury before a nearly full courtroom in Fort Edward, New York. He acted out of a baser emotion than that. He acted out of anger. And again, there is a photo of the gun that was used. And again, underneath the photo, it says Mr. Monahan insisted during his trial that his shotgun had fired on its own. The jury also seemed to reject Mr. Monahan's explanation. It took less than 2 hours to return its 3 guilty verdicts, including reckless endangerment and tampering with evidence, related in part to his efforts to clean the shotgun after the shooting. Mr. Morris said Mr. Monahan had shot twice in rapid succession, even though the cars and motorcycle were in the driveway for about 90 seconds. The vehicles were interrupting his night, Mr. Morris said, so Mr. Monahan grabbed his shotgun and intended to make them leave as fast as possible, and he didn't care if they were hurt or killed. Prosecutors also used body cam footage and 911 calls to show that Mr. Monahan and his wife had initially lied to authorities, telling a police officer who arrived shortly after the shooting that they had had no visitors that night. Mr. Monahan also feigned confusion about why neighbors had heard gunshots, Mr. Morris said, suggesting that hunters were prowling the woods behind his house after dark. It's a total farce, he said. Miss Gillis's death stunned the local community and reverberated around the nation, another random killing in a country all too accustomed to gun deaths. Days before the shooting in New York, there had been another shooting in Kansas City, Missouri, of a black teenager who had approached the wrong house while trying to pick up his brothers. Miss Gillis's friends had testified to a terrifying scene the night of the shooting, with a sudden flash of the shotgun and impact in the car carrying Miss Gillis. She was hit in the spine. In the moments following the shooting, the victim's boyfriend frantically tried to find a cell phone signal, often scarce in rural New York, to call 911 as others tried to perform CPR. And again, there was no cell phone service where they were when Kaylin was shot, so only until they were able to get reception were they able to get through to 911. Mr. Monahan had a reputation around town as a somewhat surly character and had posted private property signs warning off trespassers and a small private drive sign at the base of his driveway. And again, the private drive sign, I would estimate, was about 2 to 3 feet high, and it was very small. It wasn't a very big private property sign. And one of the, I believe it was the driver of the second SUV, had said, they had asked her about the signs, and she said that they didn't notice it. And I could see that happening because they thought they were in the right spot. It was 9:45 at night, and you don't necessarily look for signs when you don't think you're lost. And then there is the photo of the car again that I had shared earlier. But his defense attorneys insisted that the shotgun had fired on its own after Mr. Monahan, who was wearing flip-flops, stumbled on a nail and ran into a railing, an argument they said was supported by a single test of the weapon by a New York State police investigator in which it discharged after being dropped. The gun did not discharge during a series of other tests. So here, the defense said he stumbled on a nail and ran into a railing. But in that motion that they filed, they said that in an attempt to break his fall, Mr. Monahan dropped the gun, which hit either a vertical or horizontal the vertical post or horizontal railing and shot itself. So again, even the defense is changing its narrative, in my opinion. Hey, Nanya, how are you? Go Bulldogs, that actually is a good question. So Go Bulldogs said if he was paranoid, why didn't he put a gate up? It was stated that at one time he did have a gate. Why he no longer had one, I don't know the answer to that, but I agree with you. Either a fence or a gate, even like a chain link. I know a lot of people have the chain link. You have the two metal posts and you have a chain link that goes across. Miss Gillis, who had wanted to become a marine biologist, was mourned by friends and family, many of whom filled the courtroom during the trial. That included her father, Andrew, a correction officer, who said he wanted Mr. Monahan to be harshly punished. I just hope to God he dies in jail, Mr. Gillis said shortly after his daughter's death. The judge, Adam D. Michelini, will issue his sentence on March 1st. Mr. Morris also noted that Mr. Monahan was standing on an elevated porch more than 20 feet above the vehicles. He had the high ground, the prosecutor said, which were about 80 feet away and turning around. And that, I think, was, for me, a key point as well. They were in the second point of their 3-point turn, so they were leaving when he shot at the car. They were leaving. There was no threat. There were no marauding raiders, Mr. Morris. They made a mistake. Mr. Morris said. These were lost kids. And that's exactly what they were. They were lost. Yeah, not even front facing. Exactly. Yeah, Amek. I remember hearing that when investigators got the gun, it was clean, but I didn't realize that it was clean because Mr. Monahan had actually cleaned it himself. So there's a lot of, and that's why I feel like I need to go back and look at all of this, because even from when I first covered this story back in April, there's so many things that the defense said then that they're not saying now. They've changed it. And then even just in the motion they filed yesterday for a lesser charge, the details have even changed again. So it's like, what is it? And that's why I still do want to show the closing arguments, because that will give us a sense of all of the testimony that was given during the trial, not just what the news reporters wrote or did videos on. So, and the body cam footage. I did, because I was trying to see, there were some breaks in between in some of the closing arguments. So I did see a little bit of it, the body cam footage where law enforcement arrives at Mr. Monahan's home, and you can hear them ask him, what's going on, basically. And he said, and I heard him say, I was sound asleep. So again, I feel, it's my opinion, if I was a juror and just hearing the number of times Mr. Monahan's story changed in such a short amount of time, I feel like that in itself would have me thinking like he was trying to hide it. The fact that he cleaned his gun, he was trying to hide it. The fact that he waited hours before surrendering and even called his lawyer in those hours and then he sat at his kitchen table talking with his wife, it's my opinion that they were probably trying to get their stories straight. That's just my opinion. It's definitely a crazy case, and I am very happy with the outcome. If it was anything less, I would be very, very sad, because I mean, and I actually did say to Sinner the other day, actually I think it was yesterday, because when I woke up in the morning before work, I got a notification that the closing arguments were postponed until today, and that the defense was seeking a lesser charge. And so I said to Sinner, I'm like, I think they're doing this because they know they're screwed, basically, because who is, I mean, there may be some people, but who is going to believe a defense argument that the gun pulled the trigger itself? So, I mean, at least come up with something a little more logical. But Nanya, yes, the wife did testify, and she was deemed a hostile witness because when she was questioned by the prosecution, she kept saying, I don't know, I don't recall, very soft-spoken. But when she was questioned by the defense, she was very forthcoming. She was well-spoken. She was very confident. And so the prosecution, requested to the judge that she be considered a hostile witness. The judge granted that motion. And so they were able to question her as a hostile witness. And they were able to show that her testimony that she gave during the grand jury, to the grand jury, was significantly different from the testimony she was giving during this trial. So his wife did not, in my opinion, do him any favors at all. Because I, as a juror, if, obviously it was not in the presence of the jury, but I would, at least for me, I would notice the questioning change, the way that the prosecution was asking questions. So I'd be like, And I would also notice, okay, she's very forthcoming with the defense who's defending her husband. But when the prosecution is asking her questions, she's, I don't remember, I don't recall, very meek. That would be, I would definitely remember that as well. So yeah, I'm happy with the verdict, and I do still plan on going live tomorrow with the defense closing arguments. And then on Thursday, I will be live with the prosecution closing arguments. And even though we know what the verdict is, I haven't watched it, and I think it would be interesting for us to see what the jury saw and how they were able to come to their verdict. And then, so because of that, I moved Words on Stream from tomorrow to Friday. So I'll be live every day this week unless something happens. So yeah, closing arguments from defense tomorrow, prosecution Thursday, Words on Stream Friday. Nanya, no. I will not be covering the three guys from Kansas City. I feel like everyone is covering that case, and I actually want to cover hopefully I'm planning this weekend. There was a black cemetery that was built over by a military base, and so I want to look more into that, because I know at least in New York State now, at least there's laws where if you come upon human remains, you have to report it to law enforcement. And I'm curious as to, you know, what happened with this cemetery. Just like O'Hare Airport in Chicago, that's also built on an almshouse cemetery. So it's you know, people's burial ground are being built over. So yeah, I just feel like there's so many covering that case, like all the really big creators, and there's so many more stories out there that need coverage, in my opinion. There was the one actually that I had shared on my community post yesterday. This 23-year-old was on the run for killing 8 people and injuring a 9th, 7 of them family members. And I'm not sure, I haven't looked at the articles yet today, but he was found dead today from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But again, 8 people lost their lives and 1 injured, and he was out on bond. His court date was February 1st. So he was out on bond for another crime where it was a road rage. Well, I'm going to say it was road rage. He pulled up next to a woman, threw a bottle of water at her, and then took his gun out and shot into her car. So he was facing charges on that. He was able to post $10,000 on a $100,000 bond. So he was out on bond. He was set to go to court on February 1st, and for some reason, we'll never know because he's deceased, he decided to shoot 8 people and injure, well, he shot 9 people, killing 8 and injuring the other. So I may still cover that just because I'm wondering if they are able to find anything, if he left anything that would indicate why he did it. But yeah, I did see they found him in Texas. So it happened in Peoria, Illinois, which is southwest of Chicago. And they found him in Texas. So yeah, it's in Joliet. Thank you. Joliet, Illinois. I don't know why I was thinking Peoria. There must be another case in Peoria that I was looking at. Okay, I think the 8 were family members, but I'm interested to know if maybe they didn't help him get out. Yeah, and I know the man that was shot was of Nigerian descent and had only been in the country for a few months. So, but they said that police said that they believed that all of the victims were known to this kid. Oh, it's next door. Okay. Thank you, K-Braze. Possibly, maybe it was like, you know how in news articles sometimes they have like a town. So like, for example, like in New York, they'll say Albany, New York, but it didn't necessarily happen in Albany. It happened in like the Albany area, but that's just where the media outlet is from. Could be. But yeah, thanks everybody for being here. It was a good day for Kaylin Gillis's family, and I'm still trying to find out when when this first happened. Kaylin's dad gave a statement to the media, and he did state that they had filed a wrongful death suit against Mr. Monahan, but I haven't been able to find any update to that or where it is in the court system at this point. But I do know that the dad had filed a wrongful death against him as well. So, I mean, a decision, 5 seconds, 2 shots in 5 seconds. That decision, is going to put him away probably for the rest of his life. So, thank you, everybody. And I hope to see you tomorrow. If not, have a great rest of your night. And until next time, I will see you all on the flip side.